All right. So we're gonna start recording on that. So just a brief introduction here. Ty's got a vast experience from U.S. lacrosse, NLL, professional field. Did you do PLL last summer at all, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple
PLL,
weekends of PLL.
MLL. Is there anything you haven't done?
Acronyms. NHL. I haven't done that.
Okay, so
That's bucket list. So if anybody's listening out there, need that on my bucket list.
we'll have to get the Wes Macaulay on board. He's got some lacrosse ties.
Yep.
So Ty most recently participated in the 2019 World Indoors. Were you an assessor or were you on field?
I was on the field.
So, and Ty and I go way back. We met a long time ago, 1992, I think.
92, yeah.
In Sarnia, Ontario, when we both played for the Sarnia Pacers junior A team. So we won't talk much about that, but we're here to talk about officiating, dealing with the officials, coaches, kind of back and forth, understanding some rules. Ty's got really well-rounded experience, so if you have any questions, pop them into the Q&A box. If Ty can't answer them, I'm certainly going to assist to see, if I can look it up real quick or if I can give an interpretation, because we've got lots of leagues to cover.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, listen, let you take it.
Many rule books to hit through as well, too. So
awesome.
Today's purpose is pretty much to talk about effective communication between how officials and coaches really get along with each other, hopefully out on the field, as well as effective communication. Today's purpose is not to go through any rule books, specifically any rules or things like that. And you'll see that as we go through this. So with that being said, I'm going to hit my PowerPoint. We'll go through this and see if we can get that. So hopefully that's up there and they can see that.
Yeah, you're good, bud. I can see it.
So coaches and officials, the effective communication piece. Pretty much as Brad was talking about, who am I? For some reason, there we go. We're not advancing. I broke it down into 4 things: questions instead of statements, yelling versus talking, the official's explanation of calls, not the rules. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And then when tone matters, if we're going through these things. So as Brad was talking about, I've been doing both hockey and lacrosse for over 25 years. I started officiating in 91, so probably 30 some years, who knows. I don't keep counting anymore. In lacrosse, as Brad was talking about, I do the alphabet soup. I do the PLL. I've done games in the MLL. I'm a former official. I have since taken a hiatus from the National Lacrosse League. I do NCAA and U.S. lacrosse as well, too. I've officiated 3 world championships, 1 field, and 2 indoors. The most recent one being this past year up in Vancouver. And then looking at a poster here from when I did the Syracuse, I did the gold medal game in the Dome, which was pretty amazing. It was a great time. I also do hockey. I'm a former linesman in the ECHL, Federal Hockey League, Central Hockey League, ACHA, NCAA. For those, we were talking a little bit earlier about levels. I'm a level 4 USA hockey official, which is the highest you can go in that. And so I keep active with those 2 sports. And you'll see some of the things when we get through the rule books on how complex it can be. So the first piece on here is questions instead of statements. One of the biggest things that from an official's standpoint is there's a tremendous amount of pressure put onto us to get things right, and we have split-second time to make that decision. So communication is very key, not only between all the officials that are out there, but also the communication between us as officials, and I'm going to point to you guys as you, the coaches. As you can see on here, communication between officials and coaches is extremely important, essential for the game to be officiated properly. Coaches have a great deal of how the game flows and how the game kind of really is being put in context in there. There's limits. However, being able to recognize what's good and what's bad. And that's kind of where we hit that point of where's the line between being there and stepping over that line. And like Brad and I were talking before we started here, the more and more you get within your coaching, you get a little bit more comfortable. And with that comfort becomes I will say a longer leash in which the officials are going to give you a little bit, but also we're quick to tighten that leash as well too. And so it's a well balancing act between there on how we kind of get that. So when we talk about questions versus statements, you know, I just threw out a couple things that come to mind when I think of, you know, what's out there. You know, biggest thing is, well, it's right in front of you. Why don't you see that? You know, check with your partner. How is that not a penalty? You know, those are the, you know, big things that come out. And instead of throwing out those rash statements and accusing and just pounding on the officials of having that, because I know it's very frustrating from a coaching standpoint, because I also coach as well too. Ask the questions, turn it around a little bit to the official saying, hey, what's your angle on that play? What were you primary focused on looking on there? Get an understanding of where their primary and secondary focus is, because for those of you who balance on both sides of this, from a coaching side and also from an officiating side, you'll know that there's primary angles and secondary angles, things that I have to look at primary. The ball carrier is that primary piece. And out of the corner of my eye, I may not see that illegal pick, but you're focusing on that because that's part of a design play. And boom, my guy just got hit and that freed that up. So what was your angle on that? What are you looking at? Can I please get a second to talk with you or your partner about that particular play? And then what was your view on that play? A lot of it is asking the questions to the officials instead of berating them and just hitting them with a right hook of, you know, that's all you. You cost us this play. You cost us this. I hear that, you know, sometimes too is, you know, I cost it. Well, I'm not carrying the ball. I didn't make the defensive play, and so on and so forth. You know, I've had officials that I've officiated with that have done things as high as, like, you know, the Super Bowl. And so there's pieces on within even the Super Bowl that plays that maybe yes or no, you know, at least within the Super Bowl and some of my professional leagues, we have the great ability to have the instant replay. You get down into the collegiate and below, there is no replay. There is absolutely nothing. So what we see in that quick second is what we have to decide and go forward with. So with that being said, the next piece on here is talking about the explanation of the calls. We're not out there to give you the rule. We're here to give you the discussion on what we saw and our interpretation on what it is. So this is a real touchy piece, because there are a tremendous amount of rules, whatever sport you're talking about. Lacrosse is simple. I'll talk field lacrosse. When you get and I'm looking around here, I don't have my rule book right in front of me, but when you get that rule book, there's only 7 rules in there. Now, there's a tremendous amount of alternate rules within there, and I'm talking the field game. But to get those, that is our responsibility to know those rules from an official standpoint. I put onus back on the coaches. Know those rules as well too. Don't be an expert, but know the rules. Know what, when a guy takes a swing at somebody, he technically doesn't have to have contact with them in order to be a slash. So, there's where the interpretation piece comes into play. Did he come through, or did he viciously come down and try to whack him and come down with a tomahawk? So as the statement says on here, even the most experienced officials and coaches will often disagree on calls. The rules, well, they're the rules. Officials should not be explaining a rule. The coach expect them to, but rule takeaways and those kind of things is what we're kind of working on. If there is something, address it at the appropriate time, not why play is going on, please. One of the rules is, a lot of these, with advent of technology, a lot of guys want to come out with their tablets and show you, hey, did you see this? You need to look at this. Well, that's in a violation of the rule. We can't see stuff on, your tablets. So that's part of what we're talking about as far as the rules and those kind of things. Next piece on here gives you an indication of what we go through. So the rule books, just take lacrosse, for instance. These are the rule books in which I have for just lacrosse. You have the NFHS rule book. You have a U.S. lacrosse rule book, the NCAA rule book for youth, for U.S. box law, World Lacrosse, National Lacrosse League, Premier Lacrosse League, and Major Lacrosse League. Well, people will say, well, okay, it's lacrosse. Well, in each one of those rule books, there's differentiating pieces and the adjudication of what the rule is within there. That's just one piece. Now you slip in the next one, and I forgot the CLA rule book on the bottom. Now you get into hockey between ECHL, USA Hockey, NCAA, for the juniors that I do, and the Federal Hockey League is another one that I officiate in. So you start putting all these pieces together. Now I have to pregame and start feeling, okay, what rules are we going with? What is the penalty for this? How do I adjudicate this? What is the count for this? So on and so forth. Simple things, and where what is done in the NCAA is different from what's done in federation rules. What's done in professional is greatly different from what's done in other sports. So I know they're making concerted effort of trying to combine and work these things. And there's where U.S. coaches can get a strong handle on this. Take the rule book, read it, find some stuff that's within here. One of the biggest things that, and we used to call it, a small joke of mine, there was a coach that used to coach down at Bellarmine, and he always found something within the rule book that was technically sound and was something of a anomaly. And we always called it like the Burns rule. And Coach Burns, before they made changes within the rules, he would, instead of using a timeout, ask for an equipment check on the goalkeeper. Well, what that would give him, it would give him pretty much a timeout at a dead ball situation, which was 100% within the rules, and one of those like, made you think about it. And when you start really thinking about it, none of the officials knew, well, I don't say none, very rarely do you get what are the specs for the goalkeeper? What are the stick dimensions? What can he have? What cannot he have? And so on and so forth. So it kind of challenged us to put us on our heels a little bit, and it made us think about that. So anytime we had a game down there, especially in our pregame that usually lasted about an hour and a half or so, we would go through special things that, hey, we may see this today. One of the biggest things that was taught to me by one of my previous, we'll call it bosses in the National Lacrosse League, was expect the unexpected. Always be on the lookout for what could possibly come out and know that little piece. And that little tool has saved me so many times of finding those small little rules that either coaches know and say, hey, you're supposed to be calling that way, or to the fact that, all right, we need to really be conscious of, if this does happen, what do we do? If a goalie breaks his stick, what happens? Do we stop play? Do we not stop play? If he loses the glove, what happens? How do we deal with that? And so on and so forth. So with that, we'll move on to the next piece. Hey, ref, what are you looking at? I stole this. This was part of our training in the National Lacrosse League. And it kind of gives you, it's a 3-man coverage piece. So when you talk about what are you looking at, what's your primary, what's your secondary, and so on and so forth, this is, I'm dealing with the box lacrosse piece here. So we have the down official, the up official, and the single side official. So what are my primary looks? What are my secondary looks? What am I focusing on? What am I not focusing on? How many different things do I have to look at when a play is developing? And as you all know, when you get into the National Lacrosse League or World Indoor Lacrosse, the ball moves at a very, very rapid pace. The players are flying through there. There's bodies colliding. There's so much happening in such a small and confined space. You have to decide within a matter of a second or a half a second, is that legal? Is that not legal? Was there an advantage gained or not an advantage gained? Did somebody step in the crease? Did somebody not step in the crease? When they step through the crease, were they first to obtain the ball or touch the ball thereafter, so on and so forth. So as you can imagine, the computer speed is just flying as fast as it possibly can. And again, as I say, that communication between the official and the coach, you're focused on one thing, we might be focused on something else, and somewhere in that middle piece, something got lost. And there's where the communication has to be as a common thread between here, is that I may have missed something, or say, hey, next time they're down, help me or help you focus on this player or this piece. He's holding my guy's stick underneath here. He's, giving me legal cross check up underneath my guy in here. And setting the tone for that is pretty important as well too. So we talk about tone. There's yelling versus talking. When you're up on the bench, and I'll take box for instance, because in the field everybody's at the same level. But when you're in box, are you grandstanding? Are you up on there and screaming and yelling and so on and so forth? Or are you taking a voice that says, hey, next time, take a look for this? Now, I know some coaches, their tendency is to yell, and they might be yelling both at their players. They might be yelling at something that's happening out there. And then that intensity just rolls right off into, it might seem like they're yelling at us, but it's just how their nature is. Criticizing some of the mistakes that players make, telling what they need to do next, so on and so forth. But it's yelling versus talking. That's probably one of the biggest things from an official standpoint that it's very tough to curtail. Is if I have a coach that is just berating us, I might turn it off. I don't know when, it's one of those pieces where if you cry wolf so many different times throughout the game, when it actually is time to have that, you've already tone deaf me already. And so, raise that voice when needed. I'm not telling you there's times to, scream and yell. There's times. But make those times the important pieces, not every time that you have a communication with the officials. That's some of the challenging pieces that we as officials deal with. With that being said, there's one of the things that hits really hard to me is yelling versus talking. You see a picture here of the coach just ratting off on one of these guys. Especially in field, now the parents feed off of that. The players feed off of that. And unfortunately, some of the parents I'll talk about and players, they don't know where that line is towed. And you've seen there's countless stories all throughout the United States. And I don't know, I haven't done research on Canada, but I'm involved with some groups around here about physical abuse onto officials. And it's become more prevalent, unfortunately. And I belong to an association called NASO, which is National Sporting Officials. And they've done a tremendous amount of research around here. And you can see on the highlighted map here, here is a list of all of these states that actually we've had to put laws into effect to protect officials, both from a verbal abuse and a physical abuse standpoint. Unfortunately, it's come to that stand right now where I've actually had personal friends of mine. I have a very good friend of mine who officiates football, and he was involved in an incident where he flagged one of the linemen for a personal foul. The lineman disagreed with him. He told the kid to relax and he needs to take a break. Kid said some words back to him. He gave him another flag for another personal foul, which then was supposed to send him off the field. The kid with his helmet on came through and headbutted the official right in the head without him having any time to react or anything. The official had stitches in his head. He had a concussion because of that. He missed a couple weeks of work, and he was a driving force behind some of the legislation. Now Ohio has protected their officials that just passed about a month and a half ago for doing that. The other piece on this, and it's really unfortunate, is Barry Mano, who's the president of for NASO. They sent out a survey of 17,000 officials in 2017. Excess of 70% of new officials quit within the first 3 years because of verbal abuse. It's a serious issue. Without officials, nothing's going to happen. Game won't be played. There won't be anything out there. So on behalf of officials, it's just a game. Let it go. It's a game. And there's times within there to pick and choose. It's like having kids. You're not going to yell and scream at them every single moment they screw up or do something. Pick and choose what's right and what's wrong, and what we have to do. Last piece on here is tone. Tone matters. As simple as it sounds, coaches and officials find this challenging. Speaking in a professional and respectful tone instead of yelling and sarcasm, condescending, it goes a long way. And that goes from both sides too. I have been on both sides of that. I have given it to coaches. I have received it from coaches. And the more we have a better communication between us as officials and coaches, that makes the game so much easier. We could have, just a battle royale, but if there's great communication between the official and the coach, that helps out in de-escalating a lot of the pieces that happen within the series of the game. And so I would fair to say if you can work on how do I better deal with the officials? If I had to do what they did, how would I react? And same with officials. If I was in the coach's standpoint, and I'm getting paid and this is my livelihood, how would I react if that was the piece too? And we have to do that a tremendous amount of times when we're on the field. During a timeout, we'll talk about it. Hey, we need to really, wrangle this in, or, hey, this coach had a great point. We need to start looking at this. So you'll see the officials during timeouts, during halftime, during whatever breaks we have. We're actually talking about plays that are happening within there. We're talking about, hey, what'd you see on this? Well, I had this. Okay, well, I wasn't 100% on here. And like everybody, we all screw up. I will tell you, I've never had a perfect game. The day I have that, I'll hang up my whistle, I'll be done, whatever. But it's about having that respect for the coaches, having them having respect for you, having that great communication back and forth between them. So, Brad, what do you have for any questions that we have out there?
This is comment/question for you. Okay.
Yeah.
This is thanks for addressing the abuse of officials in your discussion. You may or may not have heard of the recent abuse actions in Ontario regarding officials being attacked before, during, and after games. How can we as citizens, players, coaches, and officials push the same type of legislation that you were successful in acquiring? Now, this particular commenter she's from Ontario. I would forewarn her that the legislation in the United States varies from state to state just because of the governance that USA has compared to Canada. I just want to preface that. So
Yeah.
I don't mean to make your answer more complicated or anything like that, but how can she succeed? Who can she lobby, and how can she do it?
So I'll tell you, here in the States, and I don't know how the judicial system works over in Canada. I would first start with either a local association, or in this case, we went through a NASO piece on that, as well as getting it through. And again, states work a little bit differently. So Ohio has a legislation piece in which bills get introduced for law. And so that's where it actually started a couple years ago. And myself and this other official were the driving force kind of within the southern part of Ohio, getting signatures from officials, getting signatures and promoting that as far as a grassroots piece to moving that forward to help that into law. Canadian law, I don't know, but I would say get the officials association behind that, get a national officiating source behind that, get it to either parliament or local, government, whatever that may be within provincial, and try to move it forward.
I wanted to stay quiet on that just to see how many levels of our government you could name, because you're like an honorary Canadian to me. So
thanks, buddy.
So to anybody that's on here, you can fire questions into the Q&A box. We've you covered a lot of content in a pretty short period of time, which was great because it was pretty straightforward, to be honest with you. I guess from experience, it's one of those things too, where if you're a coach, and especially younger coaches that haven't been mentored, that haven't aged or don't have that experience, and I see it quite a bit, is they kind of go wild, think they're still playing. And not that offers an excuse, but how would you suggest some of those newer coaches temper themselves when they first get back there? I have some ideas on it, so this could be a discussion, but I'd love to hear from your side, because I was one of those new coaches once.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Thankfully now I'm not.
Yeah. I kind of put that into a couple different buckets. So it's challenging coming from the field or the floor onto the bench. In the aspect of now think of it as you were the employee, and now you're the manager. And as being the manager, you're setting the tone for your entire team or your squad at that point. So, and I've seen this more often than not, when the coach gets excited, when the coach gets elevated and those kind of things, the team feeds off of that, and then their piece goes up higher and higher. Whether it's, questioning the official or screaming at the official or whatever it may be. If a coach from their standpoint can have an even keel, it brings down that hostility level of the players themselves. One of the biggest things is walk a day in the shoe. Even if they're in scrimmages or something like that, have the coach officiate. See what it's like. And have one of the players say, hey, coach, what about this? Hey, what about this? I know it sounds a little trivial, but one of those pieces of blowing the whistle and adjudicating a penalty or doing something to that effect is you'll realize, hey, this is split-second decisions here. It's not as easy as it seems out there. And also learn from mentors. How do some of the other coaches deal with the officials? And even talk to some of the officials outside of there. They'll give you a time and day. Hey, what's the best way that we can communicate with each other? What's your take on this, Brad?
Well, here, I'm going to turn my video on for this one because I'm probably sure my face will get twisted a little upside down for this one. You know what? Do you remember Wayne Paddock?
Yep.
So Wayne I mean, Wayne and I grew up after Sarnia and played junior together. And sorry to bore everybody with some details here, but to give context, I actually took a referee's course and started refereeing when I was like 16 years old. And I started refereeing in Whitby Minor. We had a huge house league area, so there was always a need for officials, and it was it was decent money for a guy that played lacrosse, and our coach was kind of crazy at the time for everybody else because we practiced 6 days a week and sometimes twice a day. So you're trying to find something. Longer to go beyond that, I started refereeing at higher levels. And then when I was coaching Junior B as a 25-year-old rookie head coach, I was still playing. So some nights it was hard for me to separate playing from coaching, coaching from playing. And I'm seeing the same guys referee that, I'm playing one night and he's dropping the ball and he's not doing something I like on the face-offs, or he's getting away with something. And then the next night I'm coaching and he's doing that game and I'm thinking all about the game before, and I'm just letting him have it because I wasn't happy with, the way it happened. The turning point for me was actually refereeing as an emergency official in Ontario. My wife and I went to a game for my alumni team. We went to watch them. A friend of mine was coaching. We showed up and one official had gotten his communication tied up and actually was at the wrong arena in a city 90 minutes away. So they needed an emergency official. So I went home and I grabbed my stuff and I came back and they put me on the floor. And my eye-opening moment was to go in. There was an older official with me, more experienced. I wouldn't say older because I think we're close to the same age, but more experienced. But we went into the room afterwards, after the first period, and I found out we were being evaluated. And, the first questions out of the evaluator's mouth were, how come you're not prepared? You don't have the right sneakers on. You're and I was discombobulated for sure. But the guy doing the evaluations was my father. And he had no time whatsoever for me to go back. Like, so you went home and got your shoes. How come you have the wrong shoes? And I give him all the credit in the world, but being evaluated and doing a high level game, which was contentious between Barrie and the Green Gaels at the time, having two very intense coaches on the bench just turned my outlook in terms of how I have to deal with it. But further beyond that, the more I got involved in lacrosse at the Ontario lacrosse level, at the world lacrosse level, you're my friend. You and I played together. And just because you officiate a game with me, like, I want to be able to take a picture with you after the game.
Right.
Like, you are still my friend. When I texted you to do this,
yeah, I
treated you like I see some of those pictures. I don't think you do this. I don't think that text gets answered, and I think there's a certain degree of decorum that coaches need to have, because I watch games now and coaches go squirrely,
Yeah.
And that, I think that part of it is coaching education, coaching experience. I think it needs to be part of a coaching module from US lacrosse, from Canada lacrosse, from world lacrosse. Like that, that's something that can be taught, and that's something that we can speak to. So I'll say that doing high level lacrosse and refereeing my friends made me realize that, I have a lot of friends who are officials, and I wouldn't want them treated the way that they have been treated.
Absolutely.
So
it's one of those tough pieces that we have to deal with. Is, although, as you had said, I have done you on the world stage, and I have done you in, very high, medal games.
Yeah.
And we have to separate, here's our friendship and here's business. And, if there's something that you don't like about me, you're going to let me have it. If there's something I see, and then I have a frank discussion with you on that. What happens on the field or the arena stays out there, and it ends right there. And then we go on our ways after that, and
yeah,
we're still friends after that. And it's interesting. I've had to referee some of my very good friends And, when they take that piece and make it personal, that's what changes the dynamic on that. And that's one of those, that's a tough piece. Once you open that can, it's like, ooh, you can't bring that into here.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm friends with Josh Hiltz. I'm friends with Ian Garrison, Jeremy Bailey, guys that do the NLL. And sure, I banter with them back and forth. But I mean, like, if they called me and needed something, I'd be there for them.
Right.
There'd be something, and I know it would be the other way around. So, let's get to some questions here. Enough about you and I. But this is a good one. What are the top 1 to 3 rules that coaches frequently misunderstand or misinterpret? Let's go with field lacrosse first on that one.
Field lacrosse. All right. I would say there's more than 3.
Hey, do you do women's lacrosse as well?
I do not. No.
Okay.
No. That's a whole different.
Another rule book.
No. Yeah. Many rule books. But I would say for the men's field, and we'll just go as a blanket for a lot of different things. It was interesting. A very good friend of mine, Wally Petrie, who may or may not be listening to this. If not, he's going to be on he'll listen to the replay. We talked about even the pre thing to here is what kind of seminars or pieces do you go to? Well, we not only put on seminars, we go to national seminars and so on and so forth. Wally had a great piece a couple of years ago that he did is the most common misconceptions of the rules, which I thought was just amazing. Now, again, they've changed some of these. I would say the first one is positioning of players, especially on faceoffs. In the field game, we have 2 guys facing off in the first. We have 2 wing guys. Everybody else that's beyond those restraining lines, a lot of misconception is they can stand pretty much right next to the coach's box. They don't have to be within the confines of what they call the interior box or piece like that. That's probably the positioning of players from a coaches / parents out of bounds. Okay, as simple as it sounds, but in the field game, if a shot's taken, it is the point of where the ball exits the field. And who is closest to that exit point? It's not who's closest to the line, who's closest to that exit point. So you might have 2 players that are jostling and trying to get to that ball. If the ball goes out here and this guy's over here and this guy's way over here and he's closest to the line, well, who's closer? And a good official in that spot's going to, hey, this guy is here, he needs to go this way, and so on and so forth. The other thing on misconceptions, I would say, is penalty time and then what infraction has occurred. If we have a solid hit on a kid, everybody's screaming, that's head contact, that's so on and so forth. Right. It has to be this, it has to be this. Well, okay. Did he have 1 step? Did he have 2 steps? Did he, where was the point of contact? Did he hit him here and then ride up and hit him on here? Or did he come directly to the head? What was the point of contact for that? And so there you might see a couple officials coming in together. We converse about that because my angle might be different from my guy who's across the way. He might have seen, hey, he came directly up into his head, snapped it over. Well, I saw the head snap, but I thought he hit him here and then came up.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's our biggest 3 things. Next one is when you get into the box piece on there. And again, depending on what level you're playing, I would say the first thing is substitutions, right? Is he in the box? Is he not in the box? Does he have to have 1 foot in or 1 foot out of the box? Hey, when the play's all the way down here, this guy wasn't even close and he came on, so on and so forth. Biggest thing on that is what advantage and disadvantage do they have on here? Was it the offensive guy that leaped out first? Was it the first guy, second guy out there? The second guy, was he now the ball carrier? Did he get that first pass coming out of there? So I would say that's probably the number 1 thing. The second piece on there is the holding, clutching, and grabbing. All right. Is that stuff going to be happening somewhere within the interior of that.
Yes.
Yeah, that stuff's going to be happening. It's always going to happen. But again, what advantage, disadvantage? Constantly, especially me, I'm always talking to players. I'm always telling them, hey, let them go. Hey, let's go this. And if I've warned the guy 1 or 2 or 3 times, boom, we're going the other way, or possibly even a penalty on here. And that's the other piece on, okay, why is a penalty one's not a penalty? Again, knowing the rules,
Right.
you know, was the ball loose or not? Do we have a loose ball? You know, did he tap him from behind or did he jack him from behind, so on and so forth? And like I said, there's so many rule books within those just, you know, between between field and box, there's so much to discuss within that.
Yeah. Well, prior to 2019, well, Langley, I think you remember I was on the floor with you guys when you're doing your officials walkthrough.
Yeah.
So it was our first year ever in the blue group to compete against Canada, United States, Iroquois, England.
Yep.
And we had practice. So just to give some context to the listeners, I wanted to understand what the rules in place, and I had a pretty good grasp of the rules, but my players had come from the NCAA, Major Series Lacrosse, Israel Lacrosse, International.
Yep.
So I wanted to give them a focus prior to competing, and we scheduled our practice immediately after the referee walkthrough at the Langley Event Center, and I actually sat on the bench and listened so that I could give my guys a kind of a pre-practice or a pre-tournament briefing on the rules and the emphasis. So, Ty, we got a couple of questions on here. So one was about the lobbying. Where would you start? So just a comment. Thanks for supporting the action. Both my husband and I sit on zone lacrosse boards, had to police arenas for abuse of parents and coaches. I'm confident in saying our officials and the respective officials association are pushing towards the reduction and prevention of the abuse. And I mean, she's bang on. I know what's happening at some pretty significant levels as well. So and it's quite important that we protect them. I mean, we lost, I can't even remember how many games we lost last year during the summer because of one such incident. And then a fellow up in my area, I believe, was hospitalized. So it's become prevalent, it's become significant, and needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Second one was boundary rules for women. We were talking about the boundary rules and whatnot. So comment was the boundary rules the same in women's field. The angle of the official below the goal line is so important. And, you know, we may have to confer with our partner on the other side for help on balls that do go out on their side. And, you know, we want to make the right call. Okay. So we emptied out the Q&A box, but I know there's people on here. Please fire away. I mean, we've got Ty here for another 15 minutes now, at least. If you've got any questions, any comments, fire away. Ty's got a vast experience at multi-sport, which I think is great. One thing I wanted to bring up because, there's a lot of people who turn to officiating as a way to quote unquote stay involved in the sport. And I almost think that's not, I wouldn't say wrong to say, but there's almost a misconception that like officiating is a huge part of sports. Huge. But, give us some feedback. Like, you've been in 3 world championships.
Yeah.
You've met a lot of people.
Yeah, from all over the world.
So tell us about that. Like, because I know you've met some crazy ones, because I've met the same ones too. But I know you've met some really cool ones that, you stay in touch with.
Yeah. And they come from all walks of life too. Some of my very good friends, one's a retired police officer from Baltimore. I don't even have to say his name, but, he has been a great mentor to me throughout the years. And going back when I played in Detroit, we played against him, and he played a different team. And so
he's a good kind of crazy, though.
He is a very good kind of crazy. I have guys that are lawyers, CPAs, guys that are school teachers, and I would say the one greatest thing I have is not only has it given me the opportunity to do some amazing things, but it's also given me the opportunity to travel literally around the world. I've done games in Australia. I've done games over in Europe. I have done things all over the United States, all over Canada as well too. Why did I get into it? It was turned on to me when I was living up in the state, up in Michigan, and a guy, approached me and said, "Hey, you need to get into officiating." And I said, "Why would the heck would I do that?" And he says, "It's a great opportunity to give back to the sport." And so I took the leap, and the first couple of years, I was like the first couple official, first, time, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. This is crazy. Why did I even choose to do this? I'm getting, berated by the coach, and this was back in '91. So, I would say for me, it was just a love and a passion for the game. And it gave me opportunity, like I said, to give back to the game. I started in it late. I started in middle school. I played hockey ever since I was, 3 years old. I played all the way up to juniors. And then you and I played in Sarnia together. And that was an opportunity that was just amazing. The biggest thing for me is that for me, it's the people. It's the people I get to meet. Even as crazy as it sounds, it's a lot of the players that I get to meet too. You see some of these big time players, and I've had the opportunity to, be on the field for some of the, greatest professionals that have, played the game of lacrosse, got to talk to them. For me, it's kind of like, it's still pretty cool. Still a kid at heart as far as that's concerned. But when I blow the whistle, play's done is play's over with. I enjoy it for the sheer action. When you get out there and you're doing a, premier lacrosse league, and, they're firing these balls well over in the excess of 100 miles an hour, and you're standing literally, a couple feet away from where that's going in. It's awesome to go see that. In hockey as well too. And then there's the other side of that, where it's the danger factor too. Unfortunately, I've caught myself in predicaments where, wrong place at the wrong time, pucks come by and, hit across, and that's where we have to wear half shields. And that's where, I know the NLL has mandated helmets for all the officials now too. Yep. But that's some of the serious side too, is, being in the right place at the right time, watching out for yourself. It gives me excellent opportunity to keep physically fit. There's a tremendous amount of running. When I do a field game, I'm putting anywhere from, 4.5 to 5 miles of running up and down the field. When I do a box game, it's probably about 2.5 to 3 miles of, 200 feet back and forth and back and forth. So it's a tremendous amount of physical activity as well too.
Yeah. I mean, with the box, you're exerting more force in a quicker, confined space. Field, you're doing twice as much, but you're running twice as far, just at a shorter pace. So, what? One of the areas we probably didn't touch on too much, but maybe we could, is recruitment. How do you recruit young officials? And I know Nassau. Like I've reached out and contacted them prior to this summit, and I'm working on a presentation with them. But you're in my spot in Ontario, or I'm in your spot in Ohio, and we want to figure out how. I need some new officials. How do I go get them? Where do you start? I
start with the coaches. I really do. I start with the good relationships that I have a lot with the coaches. Best time to capture these officials is during high school. If they're looking for doing something, even some college kids. Some of it might come in banter as well too. Talking with a kid, and he's chirping you on the field. Hey, you look great with the stripes and the whistle. You're already doing a great job of helping me out. Why don't you come out and and that may even turn into a serious conversation. Who knows? But I really deal a lot with the coaches and telling them, saying, hey, your kids are going to be playing, 4 years at high school, and some of them may not even be going to play college somewhere. Get them involved in refereeing. get them involved in doing this sport. For those that are graduating college, get into refereeing thereafter. And that's both sports that I do. Hockey, it seems a little bit easier to do than lacrosse, but we have a tremendous amount of filler that's coming in from the high school and the college ranks, as far as the kids that are seeing this as you well pointed out. It's a good way to make a couple bucks here and there, and you're doing something you really love. It's around a game that you've played. It's much easier if you've played the game to get into officiating. I'm not telling people that do other sports, because I know a tremendous amount of people that's never picked up a lacrosse stick, and they're good officials. They're really good officials.
Yep.
That maybe have done football or basketball or some other sport. Many years ago, when I used to teach a lot of the classes, and I did that for probably 10, 12 years in teaching classes, the first thing I'd ask is, all right, who's picked up one of those sticks and played lacrosse? Maybe quarter of the class have ever done that. Yep. And so that, for me, I now need to transition from, okay, you should know this and this and this, to let's get back to the real basics of simple things. Is how do you blow your whistle? And it sounds trivial, yep, but there's a proper way to blow your whistle and get that authority and get that across.
Yeah. So deal with always around our SAGM here in Ontario, Jeremy Bailey, Neil McDonald, bunch of Ontario guys. Trying to think who else is there. Duckus is there. I think Ian's usually gone for NLL, but there's a good combination of officials that are putting on the clinics for the guys. And I happen to be rooming right beside, I think it was Jeremy Bailey this year.
Okay.
And I came in, or I was leaving Sunday morning, and I said to him, hey, I said, Jeremy, if there's anything you can teach the new guys, tell them to blow their whistle like they mean it. And he goes, what do you mean? Like, Sunday morning on, nobody's had their coffee yet. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, Jeremy, there's nothing more annoying as a coach, like as a guy who's sitting there, than the kid who has no confidence in the calls that he's making.
Yes.
And he just blows the whistle. And he goes, oh, I thought you meant because of loudness. And I'm like, no. I said, for me, I know I got him. I know that this kid is he's lacking conviction. He's lacking confidence, because he just kind of puts his whistle to his mouth, blows it, and maybe extends his arm real quick.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm like, tell him to blow it, extend the arm, and run the other way like he knows what he's doing. Because even if he made a mistake, 3/4 of the audience has no clue.
Yeah. That's one of my biggest pieces when I do evaluations now, and I'm more on the senior side of that. When I go and evaluate younger officials, even some officials with a couple of years of experience, I say the first thing that the coach is going to look at you is one, what's your presentation like? Did you come, like you just said, when you had evaluated and your dad was evaluating you, did you come with the proper equipment? Do you look like you're in a position to do your job? And then when you have achieved that little piece, the first couple things that come out of your mouth, whether it be the whistle, whether it be your first call, or whether it be your first communication with the coach, if you have any hesitancy in any of those three, the sharks will be swimming, and they will be smelling the blood in the water.
Yep.
If you have achieved, did I look the part? Did I act confident? Did I have a conviction out there? The rest is easy. You can get through the rest of the pieces. But if you failed those first couple, 3 pieces, they are going to hammer you and hammer you and hammer you. And so from an official standpoint, that's one of the things that I'm trying to bring as a standard is professionalism, is bringing the knowledge of the rules. That's an obvious one.
Yep.
Is your presence on the field, is having a very strong presence on that field and having the conviction to make the right call. Even if it's the wrong call, you got to stand behind it. And then if you do find out, and that's where you go with your partners, and they say, well,
Yeah.
this is it. Have the conviction to swallow your pride and say, look, that was me. I screwed up. And I've done that.
We all have. I mean,
and go to coaches and like, look, that was me. That was all me. One of the other biggest things that was taught to me is, and especially when you get into higher and higher and higher levels, because there's more cameras, there's more angles than you'll ever figure out, is don't ever lie out there. Is because you lie and you say, well, it was this, and you're not 100%. That was that. There's going to be a camera angle. There's going to be a microphone. There's going to be something that's going to pick you up and, shred you apart. And so that would be some of those other challenging pieces as we go through an officials.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because in Syracuse, when the bronze medal game, we were playing the United States, and our locker room was actually right beside the control studio for the television and whatnot. And somehow the door got opened into our coach's office. And I kind of looked, and I said to the guy, like, how many cameras do you have on here today? And there's like 20 some odd cameras and mics and everything else. And I just remember looking at it, and I was like, can I come in here at halftime and review this stuff? But you're right, because there's cameras everywhere. Langley, there was tons of cameras. So listen, we're approaching the 7 o'clock here. Anybody that got any questions, please fire it in there so we can get Ty on the road. Well, you're going on the road, so we can finish up with Ty and give him back his time. But I'm going to ask you a question while hopefully someone's doing that. It's 3 world championships. What's your fondest memory, and which one's your favorite?
Fondest memory. The camaraderie. I would say my first world championship was 2003. It was in Towson, Maryland. The camaraderie of guys that I had never met before from all over the world. And we came together as a group, and we took over a local establishment and had a sing-along, in which you had to know within the first 5 minutes, and then everybody had to lead that sing-along. And I tell the story to so many officials, is that you have guys from Japan, you have guys from all over, from England, from everywhere in the world, and we all came together within there. And it was just one of those moments that it was just amazing. It was amazing. The other factor of doing 3 world championships, just seeing some amazing lacrosse, and going to places that you'd never think of going. I tell people, I said, it's determination, setting some goals, and some hard work. I can remember when we were in Syracuse, we were sitting at the breakfast, and they were announcing who the crew was for the consolation game and the gold medal game. Well, I didn't hear my name on the consolation game, and I'm like, man, I should.
Because I asked for you not to be in that one.
And then they said, here's the crew for the gold medal game, and I was at awe. It was an amazing thing.
So for context for people that were here or people that are listening, in 2015 we held the World Indoors in Onondaga, and they were held. Most of the round robin was held at the Onondaga. What's it called now? The new one is called the Pavilion, I believe. They built a brand new facility for it, and then there was the older Onondaga Arena. Yeah. For the bronze and the gold medal game, or the consolation game and the gold, how you like to figure it out. For the bronze medal game, we actually switched gears and we moved those medal games into the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. So, if you've seen the layout for basketball in there, essentially we had a grounds crew build a hockey facility or a rink on top of the end zone, I think out to the 20-yard line. And we brought stands in. It was quite a sight to be seen. And I think for our game there was 10 to 12,000 people, and I think it was 13 to 15 for the gold medal game. So that's part of the reason why, and I'm in the same boat as Ty, because I walked into the Carrier Dome and I just kind of went, wow, it's pretty cool. So I can't imagine as an official, walking into Carrier Dome and you're doing the gold medal game between the Canada and the Iroquois, which was a phenomenal game, by the way.
Yeah, that was. I would say real quick, the last one is field related, because I'd seen it on a replay. I would say my biggest game that I have had so far was a field game. It was Michigan against Ohio State. And if you know anything about that rivalry,
yeah,
it is sheer detest between those two. No matter what, it could be paper planes and throwing paper planes. And if it's against Michigan and Ohio State, they're going to kill each other, and whatever it is.
Game's on, right?
I had the opportunity to do the Michigan Ohio State, and I was the crew chief for this game. It was being played at Ohio State, and the game was being played just before the spring football game. So if you know anything about Ohio State football or even Michigan football for them is king. It's the end all be all. And they had a special. It was like $5 to get into the lacrosse game, which also got you into the football game. Ohio Stadium holds 110,000 people. So here you have Michigan versus Ohio State pregame before the spring football game. By halftime for our lacrosse game, they said they had somewhere in the tune of about 65 or 70,000 people in that stadium. So to me, that was just one of those amazing things. And by the end of the game, they had probably about 75 to 80,000 people in the stadium. And, here you had all these people that pretty much didn't know much about lacrosse. They were here to see a football game. But it was one of those surreal moments where this is pretty cool, to be on that field with all of these people there. That was pretty cool to have, check that box. I couldn't imagine doing some of these football games when you got 110,000 people or
right,
screaming at all these football officials. So
nice. Well, listen, Ty, we went a little bit over the hour. Right. Appreciate your time. What's this? Oh, Stephen Taylor, great discussion. Thank you. Hey, Stephen, glad you're aboard. Now this Stephen Taylor, I believe he's actually a women's official.
Okay.
Stephen, where are you from? Because
while you're answering that, I want to take a moment to thank you, Brad, for doing this. I've looked and seen a lot of the people who you have on, and I just want to say thanks for letting me be part of this. You got one of our mutual good friends. You got Foxy coming up at some point talking about equipment and so on.
Foxy went on Foxy was on last week, did a bang up job. Yeah,
I missed it. All right.
He's got a replay.
All right. I'll have to watch that. But there's another, mutual friend in which, off the field, he and I are good friends. We get into a situation where he's on the bench representing X team. He's chirping me as much as the head coach would be.
Yeah.
But you
can get away with it though, because it's Foxy.
You've had some great discussions, and it's been fun.
Okay, Stephen Taylor. I knew this name because I know two Stephen Taylors, one that I played with and one that was an official. So this Stephen Taylor that's been on here was the World Lacrosse head of women's officiating. That's awesome. Why we were getting some pretty succinct rules. So he apparently just done in 2019 from England, okay. Now lives in Ontario. So awesome. Stephen, I don't know what you look like, but if you're around Brooklyn in the summer next year or anywhere close to Iroquois Park and Brooklyn's playing, come find me. So we'll leave that one there. Ty, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It's been
absolutely.
It was fun hanging out with you in Langley when we had the time to do so. But I appreciate your chat. There's obviously a lot more to this game than just coaching and playing. Officiating, it's kind of the thankless job. It's the forgotten job. But for every official we can keep, or every player that can turn into official, it's one more person that we can keep in this game. It's another relationship that we keep in. And it's just, like I said, vitally important. So glad you could come on and share some of your experiences with us, and how to deal with officials and coaching on the communication line.
You got it, buddy. Anytime.
All right. Take care.
See ya.